Hey everyone, it's Sarah with Paint and Party. I want to show you guys, this is this month's one of the paintings for the Creators Club, and it is on a 16 by 20 canvas. But what I wanted to show you guys is just how to paint this background on a piece of wood. Just to kind of show you that it's the same concept. It's just on a different piece. So what I did is I've got a piece of wood here. You can actually buy these at Lowe's or Menards. Sometimes they're called like craft wood. You can also get, I believe there's pine, but they come in a long piece. And at Lowe's, they'll cut it down for you. So, and I think Home Depot will as well. So this is 12 inches wide and it's 16 or 18 inches tall. But you could do, whatever size you wanted. And you can use your paintbrushes, you can use a foam brush, you can use just like a big paintbrush. I actually just picked this up at the Dollar Tree, so these are pretty easy to find and pretty inexpensive. Plus you can reuse these kind. But I've just got some black and some white paint. I've got some water here, and I'm just gonna kind of show you guys how to do this wood grain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my big flat brush, I'm going to just dip it in some water. Putting white and black together. It doesn't take a whole lot of black. Okay. And wood is the same as a canvas, whereas if you get too much black or you just don't like the way it looks, you can always cover it up, okay? I'm using water to sort of thin this out and move it around. Especially if you want to see the wood grain through it, you'll want to water your paint down a little bit. And the key to kind of getting that streaky look is not mixing your colors together. So if you notice, I just put a little bit of white, I didn't put any black, and I'm just streaking this on. Okay, and you don't want to come in and do like little brush strokes like that. You want to start at the top and make your way down. Okay. So those long brush strokes give it that streaky look. You can paint the edges if you'd like. It's just kind of like with my wood sign parties, I always say it's a preference. If you want to paint them, you can. I'm just turning my brush on its side there just to kind of get in those little crevices that aren't really wanting to take the paint. And you can put as many layers or as many coats as you want on here. It's up to you. And I'm just using plain old acrylic paint. I've got my Apple Barrel White and Apple Barrel Black that I got at Walmart. And these boards are, I don't know, it depends on what size you get, $15, $20 something for the long one. But you could do 5 or 6 projects with it, so that's kind of fun. And you've got, they're two-sided too, so you could do the other side with whatever you wanted. So I'm just trying to get this bottom part here. I'm going to move it up a little bit so I can do my longer brush strokes here. And if you kind of go like this and then smooth it out right away, kind of blend that in. Okay, now I like it to where I can see some of that wood grain through. If you really want to see the wood grain through, grab a like a paper towel or a napkin, and you can go in and wipe this down and see how you can really see that wood grain. And then if you take too much off, you can go back and kind of wipe it off. Okay. All right. So we want to let that dry for just not too long. I'm going to grab a small brush here. I've just got a little kind of angled brush. And what I want to do is I want to show you guys how to make these wood grain marks. Even though we can see some of the wood through there, we're going to go in and just give it some more detail. And so you want to go with the grain. So we want to go this direction. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a teeny bit of black on my brush. It doesn't take much at all. And we want to stick with those long brush strokes. So I want to start at the top here. I've got my brush on the skinny side. Just kind of give it a little bit of color here. Okay. Now, if you get it too thick or you get it too much, the beauty of acrylic paints is you can take your brush and just go over it. I wouldn't put a lot of paint on it. Just kind of take your brush and just soften it, okay? All right. So I'm gonna do these all the way across, just kind of these little flat, skinny lines that aren't perfectly straight. So if you think of how wood grain is, it's curvy, it doesn't go all the way. So you could even do one that just goes to like there, come over here. And so I'm making these skinny lines. I'm not pushing very hard. Super light touch. I'm not really using any water. Now, if you water down your paint a little bit, it does give it a thinner consistency to where it's a little easier to, I just put a little bit of water on there, to work almost kind of like an ink pen. So if you're struggling to make those lines, don't really like this one here. Okay, and you're gonna have a lot of flowers and a lot going on the bottom, so keep that in mind. Now we've got some like little knots in the wood, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do one right here, so it kind of curves a little bit. So I'm gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna kind of go and make it go out a little bit on the other side. And then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna put some dark in the center and a little bit of white. I'm gonna make that a little bit wider. So it's pretty simple. Okay, not super bold. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's do another one up here. And I'm just using that same brush. Just give it some gray in the middle there. Take a little bit of white and just soften it a little bit here. Okay, and I think I'm gonna do one more right here. And you guys can tell I'm not rinsing my brush. I'm just kind of toggling between the black and the white. adding a little here, adding a little there. And I'm really not using very much paint at all, guys. You don't need to go in and like cake this paint on. It's just gonna make it more difficult. Okay. Now, I feel like I need some like little lines. So I'm gonna go in and just do some, I've got a little bit of white and a little bit of black on my brush at the same time. They're not straight lines, just very lightly. I feel like this is really, I need to make this a little bit more subtle. There we go. You could even do some like really little knots, like just to make a little dark, kind of almost like a oval circle. Okay, and that's it. Again, if you feel like there's any spots that are, you know, like too harsh or something, you can always take your brush and soften it up a little bit. Okay, but I'm pretty happy. All right, and then you would want to let it completely dry before you put anything else, put the brush down, anything else on the background. This is pretty much dry. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put our green stems in here. Okay. If you don't have green, you can mix a little bit of blue and yellow together. Just take a little brush, grab a little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue. I don't want to mix it all together because then I may have to just waste a bunch of paint, okay? And we don't want to do that. A little bit more here. Okay, there we go. Put a smidge of black in there just to kind of give it more of like an olivey tone. Okay. All right, so I've just got just a small angled brush here. And what I'm gonna do is we're gonna start at the bottom and we're going to just angle these lines up. They're gonna be all different lengths. Some are gonna be really short. I feel like I'm not green enough here. There we go. A little bit more yellow. So you want to think about some of these tall ones are going to have flowers on them. So you want to kind of think about where you might want to have flowers. Or you can just wing it and go back in and put the flowers on at the end. Okay. Wherever you put your little stems. Now I like to make the whole stem Then if I feel like I need to go back and thicken it up, like this one, I feel like it needs a little bit more, I go back and do that. Okay. So any of the paintings that are in the Creators Club you can do on a piece of wood, you could do on a piece of paper, you could really do anywhere. So, you know, you can take the concept that I show you and put it on a different, you know, piece. Glass, you can use regular acrylic on glass. If you've watched my tutorials on glass painting. But if you're going to drink out of it, or if you're going to wash it, you want to use multi-surface paint, which this right here is multi-surface paint. And sometimes it'll show a glass on the top of it. That one is folk art. But you can get Apple Barrel, you can get Craft Smart, I believe has some. You can get whatever kind. Just make sure it says for glass or non-porous surfaces. Okay, now down here at the bottom, I want to do a lot of these little lines. Now, if you do have just straight green paint, you want to add a little bit of white into it or a little bit of yellow. It's going to help you cover. So if it's not covering well, you want to add a little bit of white, or I'm going to add a little bit more blue in here. I just want to darken it a little, just to give it some different colors down here at the bottom. The yellow and green makes neon with a little bit of white. So if you want like some neon green, stems, you could do that. Just kind of have a few different. Okay, so I feel like I've got a good start here. Now I can always go back, like I said, and add in, you know, stems wherever I feel like we need them. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stick that brush in the water. And so these flowers, guys, they're going to need 2 coats of paint. Okay, I've got pink and yellow. You can use whatever colors you want. And purple. If you don't have purple, I'll show you guys how to mix some red and blue together and make some purple up pretty easily. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start with one of these little daisies. I'm going to just put some white paint. I've just got this little angled brush, or we could use let's do this. Let's use the little round brush. Okay. Just going to set that one aside. We'll use that again. Okay. White paint, I don't really need any water. Okay. So I'm going to just start over here. I'm going to do one little daisy right here. Okay, so I'm going to start with a circle. Yes, I'm using my white paint, even though that center isn't going to be white. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to make like little, kind of like little leaves looking. They almost look like a teardrop. Light touch. Make them a little bit smaller than what you think they're going to want to be. You can always fatten them up. Okay, so I've got kind of my base on there. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to just fill this in with some white. It's not going to be perfect. We'll go back over it with a second coat. So we're gonna just let that one be, and we're gonna do a few more. I'm gonna do sort of a little one down here, and I'm just gonna do 3 little petals kind of hanging down here from this little guy. Now a little bit of my green got in with my white. That's okay. I just wiped my brush off a little bit and went back with some white. And it's okay to make this paint a little bit thick. It's all right. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse that brush. Now everybody's paintings are gonna look different, right? So this one is gonna look different than the original that I did, and that's just like part of the fun, right? Okay, so I'm gonna do another one here. I'm making these, I like to make these kind of almost like a mustache. It's super duper humid today, so this is probably gonna take forever to dry, which is okay. All right, so I'm gonna do, let's see, one more little one here. Okay, and I think we need another white here. So it's gonna be close to the edge. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna rinse this brush, and I'm gonna move on to some pink. If you don't have pink, you could mix some red and white together. You could even add a little bit of yellow in there. That will give it a little bit of a coral color. It's kind of pretty. Sometimes pink is a little bit see-through, so you might need to add some white on this first coat, and then the second coat will do more of a straight pink. Okay, so I'm just gonna go and I'm just gonna fill some spots in where I want to have more flowers. Okay, so I'm gonna do one right here. And that one, I'm just putting 3 petals on there. Okay. Do one down here. Now remember, you don't have to have one on all of these stems. It's some of them can just be grass, you know. Okay. And if you want more flowers than me, by all means, you can draw flowers till forever. If you're kind of struggling with the way they look, if you're like, oh, I just don't know if that looks like a flower, move on. And when we come back and do the centers and do a little bit of shading, it will help to kind of define those a little bit more. Let's see. Let's do one here. Okay, and I think one more up here, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some purple to kind of fill in those gaps. Okay. Okay, so I want to let those dry, so I'm going to just move on to doing our little kind of like cone flowers here. And like I said, if you don't have any purple, we can mix, let's see, I've already got some blue on my plate, so I'm going to put a little bit of red on there. And this is just Candy Apple Red by Apple Barrel. Okay, and again, you don't want to just mix them together. You want to mix off to the side, so that way you're not wasting all of your paint with the wrong, making it the wrong shade, okay? So I'm just starting to add together here. The more red you add, gives it like that eggplant color. And the more blue you add, gives it more of a purple. And I always like to add a little bit of white in, just to kind of lighten it up a little bit. A little bit more white. There we go. Now, if you have purple, just by all means, use it. Okay, there we go. Now we're looking purple. Okay. So you can mix that until you find the shade of purple that you like. Okay, we're going to use white and purple together. Or you could use orange or teal or a different color if you wanted to, or just straight blue. Okay. All right, so I am going to switch back to this little round brush, okay? Now these are really easy to make. I'm going to just put a big glob of paint on my brush. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to add some white in so you guys can see this a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to just start at the top of the little stem. As we go down, we're going to make it a little bit wider. And then we're going to come back to another point. I'm just going to do blue so you guys can see this better here up against this gray. Okay, so I'm just dabbing, dabbing, dabbing. And we want to have a little bit of white in some places to kind of show the curvature, okay? All right, so there's one. I kind of like the blue on there. I think I'll do another blue. So I'm going to do another one right here. Again, I'm just starting out at the top, dabbing out a little bit, and then coming back to the center and just going straight down. You don't need it to be really big. Just give it a little bit, make it come out a little bit along the sides. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to do this one right here, and I'm just going to make it kind of come behind this flower. So I'm just going to kind of skip where that flower is. And just come down to another little point there. Okay, I'm dabbing super lightly, Just kind of fill this in the center. I've got blue and white on my brush. Get close to that. Whenever we do the second coat, we'll kind of bring that white on top of the blue there too, just to give it more of the illusion that it's behind, the blue's behind there. Just add some white in there, put some texture. Okay, I think I'm gonna do another one right here. And I know I am definitely faster at this than most people, so please pause if I'm going way too fast, which I'm sure I am. Okay. All right, so let's do one more right here. It's gonna kind of go down to this little stem right here. This would be cute too on like one of those like palette boards that you can buy at Walmart that are like already pre-made kind of thing. I'm gonna make this come up a little bit more, just to kind of fill in that space right there. We're also gonna put our little bee up there too, so. Okay, rinse your brush. Once you get those done the way you like them, don't overthink it. Step back, look at it from a little further away. Okay, now I've still got my white paint. I know there's pink and there's purple in it, but I'm just gonna find a little clear section, and I'm gonna go back to my original flower here, and I'm just gonna go over it with some white first. Clean brush here and get that little gob of paint. Okay. Now I also want to add some yellow into this. So I've still got my white on my brush. I'm just gonna put some yellow in here, and it's not going to be solid yellow. So I'm just going on top of that wet white paint and adding some yellow in those leaves. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna put some white on my brush again. And I'm gonna do the same thing down here. I've still got some yellow in my brush, so I'm just kind of going with it. Wipe it off a little bit and then go back and do some stronger yellow in there. Now we'll still go back and do more on the centers, okay? They're gonna be green. You could also do brown or like a dark green. You could mix some black with your green, or some blue with green will darken it up. Okay. And do this one a little bit more yellow. Okay, remember you want to kind of keep on top of that blue there. So you can even put a little bit of your flower over. And I've said this a million times if you've painted with me, but when I paint flowers, I like to make them thick. I just think it makes it look so much better. So by thick, I mean a lot of paint. I just really like that look. It gives it that curvature, like it's real, that depth in there, okay? Now, anything that you feel like you need to go back and kind of clean up or add to, you can do that. I'm gonna let that dry a little, and I'm gonna go back over the pink. And I'm gonna do the same thing with pink and white, but I wanna start with pink on my round brush still. Find one that's dry. It's important for it to be dry. Otherwise, you won't get that solid like foundation on there, and your paints are just gonna mix together and you're still gonna be able to see through your paint, okay? All right, now I'm gonna put a teeny bit of white. Now I'm kind of losing my petals here a little bit, so I'm gonna just take my white and just outline these petals a little bit, okay? Just to kind of show the curves in there. The same thing along here. Okay, just a couple more here. We're still gonna come back and do the centers, but I wanna just get this paint on here. A little bit of white again. Just kind of outline. And you guys notice I'm doing this while it's wet. That's important, because if you try to do the shading while it's dry, it's going to be really hard to blend it. And you want to be able to blend and make it dimensional. Okay. You could get as fancy as you want if you wanted to add some green in with these yellow, or add a little bit of blue in. You could even do like a little bit of blue on the edges of these pink flowers, super lightly. Okay. You could add orange into the yellow. That would look cute. Okay. Now I'm gonna work on the bee. Then we'll come back and we'll do the centers of our flowers, because we want to let those dry a little bit before we start to add anything else in there. Okay, so I'm gonna do my bee right up here. Okay, and what I want you guys to do is just think of it in shapes. Okay, so we've got an oval, circles, almost like U's, a circle, and then little lines, okay? So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna draw one for you guys on my paper. So I've got the center of my bee. It's like an egg, okay? Now we're gonna do all this in yellow, so hold tight, don't do it yet. Okay, and then a line here, a line here, and then we want to try to kind of mimic them, but he's in motion, right? So if his wings aren't exactly, and then we're going to do his little antennas and a head. Okay, easy peasy. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my brush, and we're going to go back to yellow. All right, so I'm going to make his body first. it in. Okay. Now I'm going to make little lines. 1, 2. I always think the left side is harder. 3 and 4. Okay. Now I'm going to put a little bit of black on my brush, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to make his little head. I didn't rinse the yellow off. That black is going to just overpower everything, which is fine. Just going to do a first coat on there. Now, as far as the little antennas, you can use your pointy brush. You could also grab a Sharpie and make those on there after everything is really good and dry. But we're just doing a line and 2 little dots at the end. Okay. Now I want to let him dry before I go and put the black on there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let him hang out for a little bit, and I'm going to go back and I want to show you guys how to do these centers. Okay, so I've got green paint and I've got yellow paint is what we're going to use. So I'm going to first load my brush up with a bunch of green. Okay. And I'm going to go in here to the center and I'm going to dab my green on. So that way the white is still going to show through and some yellow is going to show through too. Okay. So, and my white is still a little wet, and that's cool. Okay. So a whole bunch of paint, and I'm just dabbing it on real lightly. Okay. And do the same thing on the pink. And if you feel like your circle needs to be a little larger, it's all right. You can just go up outside of that line that you already made. Too much white on my brush. Go back and add a little more. Okay, now if you want to add a little bit of yellow, just teeny tinies in there, just on like one side. Kind of gives it some more shading. All right, now we're gonna go back to our bumblebee. I'm gonna do more yellow, as you can see through his body, and I don't like that. I'm not gonna add more yellow to the wings, because we're gonna go over those with black. We're still gonna be able to see that yellow, but that's how I did it on purpose. Okay, so it's kind of like he has two wings. Okay, right there, and right here. Okay, and then he has little lines that go across his body. You want to let the yellow dry. that's it. So easy to do on the wood versus